I kept late nights tapping away at my computer keyboard, working at streams of figures and characters that would have made absolutely no sense to a regular person. On this night particularly, I stayed up about an hour past my computer curfew time, which was 12 a.m. The only sounds in the entire house were the clickety-clack of my keyboards as I hurriedly went through computer code and made corrections wherever I detected flaws in it. I had not had anything for dinner, but despite the gnawing ache in my stomach, I continued my work diligently. One glance at the wall clock told me the time, 1:13 a.m. My brain sent distress messages all over my body, attempting to let me know it was tired, but one sip of my coffee, and I was wide awake once more and pounding away at the code. The grumbling in my stomach grew louder the more I typed, and soon I decided to get myself something to eat. I headed to the refrigerator, but on opening it up, found it virtually empty. All my quick snack boxes were gone, save for a single pack which contained a piece of raw mutton. I sighed, grabbed the pack, and put it on the electric cooker to heat up slowly. On the counter there lay an open pack of an idea, a pizza box. Something about having pizza delivered to my doorstep late that night piqued my interest, and I quickly took out my mobile phone and looked up Domino's Pizza online. Whoever would make the delivery would get a 5-star review from me, I thought. A closer look at the website, and I realized they did deliver at any time during the day or night, and even better, there was an outlet store 2 streets away, which would mean less than a 30-minute interval before delivery. I bought the idea, and heading over to my laptop, I typed in the delivery company's name and hit the search button. After the results loaded, I quickly copied out their front desk phone number and dialed it on my phone. "Hello, Domino's Pizza is available for you. You can place your order now. So what would it be?" Came an emotionless, seemingly bored voice at the other end. "I'd like a 10-inch pizza box, thank you," I replied. "Flavor?" "Pepperoni," I hastily replied, then added, "Make it 2 boxes, please." "All right, thanks for patronizing Domino's Pizza. We appreciate your patronage and will deliver it to your doorstep." The static at the end of the call was pleasing to my ears, and my heart raced at the delivery of the delicious treat which I hoped would arrive soon enough to quell my growing discomfort. I went back to the editing code and finished off a couple more lines before I completely zonked out while still at my desk. There was a knock on the door, and I got up from my swivel chair and moved towards the door. The knocking intensified as I got closer to the door. Suddenly, without warning, and when I was mere inches away from it, my front door, which had been locked, swiveled open slowly, making several creepy squeaks, making my eyeballs nearly pop out of their sockets. I almost pissed in my pants when the door swung open the full 90 degrees and I could not still see anyone. A cold drought blew over my skin, causing hackles and goosebumps all over my face and arms. Inching forward slowly, I got to the threshold of the door, and as far as my eyes could see, there was no one in sight. My front door overlooked a paved street, and as I stared, that empty street stared back at me. I assumed I had not locked the door earlier, and proceeded to do so then. The satisfying click of the lock put my mind at ease, and I went back to my swivel chair. One glance at the clock said it was 1:02 a.m. I sat down on my swivel chair. No, wait, that's not right. Was it just me, or had time just gone backward? I remembered checking the clock and noting that it was 1:13 earlier. I must be dreaming, I thought. I reached out for the cup of coffee I had been drinking from, but there was no cup there. I tried pinching myself, without success. I was in deep shit if I could not get up because I had to collect and pay for my delivery. The continuous growling of my stomach told me that my stomach did not yet know we were stuck together in this dream state. I tried to keep my cool, but was losing it by the minute. A panic attack set in, and adrenaline rushed through my veins. Gradually, I could feel myself getting increasingly stronger due to the adrenaline hijack situation I found myself in, but nonetheless, it was getting more difficult to move my muscles. I wanted to scream, but thought the better of it. I tried to figure out a way out of the situation by keeping my head cool and rationalizing. I wonder then why my body was demanding that I keep calm and rationalize. It must be the effect of whatever was keeping me stuck in this dream state. I remember distantly learning some sort of Buddhist training I had undergone sometime earlier under the tutelage of a self-acclaimed Indian guru. I wondered if the techniques I had learned from him could be effective at this point. I drew in a huge single breath and crossed my legs, letting my face assume that the peaceful look the guru had said was evidence of having attained control over one's center of being. It seemed effective, as I could now focus, and even though I was still unable to snap out of the whole dream thing, I could gather myself together now. There was continuous knocking on the door. I got up once more and opened the door. Still, there was no one there. This time, even while I had opened the door, the knocking still went on. Boy, I was royally fucked, I thought. Eventually, the knocking degenerated into a series of uncoordinated poundings on the door. Soon, I heard a loud smashing sound. That seemed to do the trick, and I snapped quickly out of my perpetual slumber. The first thing I saw around me was fire. Lots of fire. I hastily attempted to grab my computer system, snagging a couple of wires but still being unsuccessful. The flames were licking into my household articles at amazing speed. I looked at the door and saw that there was someone standing by the broken doorway, yelling and beckoning to me. It was the person who had awoken me from my deep slumber.
"Come on, man! The whole place is on fire! Fire!"
the pizza delivery man yelled. I immediately abandoned my quest to save any items in the house and raced out. I had gone about halfway to the door when I found myself facing a breath shortness problem. I instantly began coughing and felt a dizzying weakness that brought me to my knees. My muscles burned due to the lack of air while flames inside the room continued its rampage. The pizza delivery man got into the house, crossed my hands over his shoulder, and supported me while I gasped, limping with me until we had both crossed the doorway and headed into the street. While we went past, I could see the 2 pizza boxes he had brought and his delivery bike some distance away. He laid me on a lawn some distance away from my house, and I watched on through my broken door while the fire devoured the objects inside.
"I'm sorry I broke your door, sir. I saw the fire, but I could not get inside,"
said the man whose name tag read Damien. "Damien," I called out suddenly after some minutes of silence. "Thank you," I added gratefully. Damien the delivery man smiled and acknowledged my thanks. Then I passed out. I came to in a hospital ward room with a few third-degree burns. I found out that my computer system had somehow been saved from the worst of the fire, and that the hallucinations I had experienced was caused by inhaling secondhand smoke by my next-door neighbor who was vaping a substance containing LSD. The fire had started when the plate containing the mutton I placed on the heater had melted. I turned to my left and saw on the chair there my 2 boxes of pepperoni-flavored pizza. I smiled. My phone was still inside my pocket, so I put my hand in there and brought it out. The screen was still displaying the last thing I had searched, Domino's Pizza. I smirked and scrolled down to the point I had placed my order and left them a 5-star review.
This story takes place when I was 22 years old. I had just gotten home from a long night of stocking shelves at my local grocery store. I worked the closing shift, so I usually got home around midnight. I shared a cheap apartment with my roommate, Mark. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, but I just felt lucky to have a place to live that wasn't my parents' basement. I walked into the kitchen to rummage through the fridge for something to eat. I had just pulled a frozen burrito out of the freezer when I noticed something weird. My bedroom door had been slightly open when I walked by the hallway. I know this doesn't sound strange at first, but I specifically remember closing it that morning when I left for work. I like my privacy, so I always remember to shut my door when I leave for the day. I stepped back into the living room and looked down the hall. "Hello?" I called. There was just dead silence. Not wanting to let the fear get the better of me, I walked across the living room and flicked on the hallway light switch. "Mark, is that you?" I asked. Mark had always been a bit of an odd guy, so I couldn't help but think that maybe he was trying to play some sort of weird prank on me. Maybe waiting to jump out of my closet or something when I entered my room. When I finally got to the bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated a large portion of the room. I looked around, definitely feeling the creepy vibes. There was no one there, and nothing looked out of the ordinary, just the usual, my twin bed with my nightstand just to the left. I closed the door shut and walked back into the kitchen. I popped my dinner in the microwave and pressed the start button. While I was cooking, I turned on the television, ready to put on a scary movie to watch and relax. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thump coming from down the hall. At first, I thought it was the neighbors or something. They can be pretty loud sometimes, and it's not unusual to hear a loud bump in the night. But then it happened again, and this time I could tell for sure it was coming from down the hall. "Mark?" I called once more. The microwave beeped just then, and I nearly had a heart attack. "Yeah, sorry, dropped something," I could hear him say through the door. I'll admit, I felt a little better knowing that Mark was home. I walked back into the kitchen to get my food, and that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Mark. "Hey dude, running a little late here at work. Could you leave the door unlocked for me by any chance?" My stomach dropped to the floor and a chill ran down my spine. I texted back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He responded only a few seconds later, "Yeah, why?" At that moment, there was another noise from the hall and I looked up. The silhouette of a large man was standing there holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. I turned and ran towards the front door, hearing the heavy clunk of the man's boots behind me. He wasn't running, instead it sounded like he was slowly walking, taking his time. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the emergency staircase and out into the parking lot where I called the cops. The cops showed up just a few minutes later. They went upstairs and searched my apartment, but they said they didn't find anyone. What they did find still terrifies me to this day. As they were searching the apartment, the cops found a note left on the kitchen table, held under a salt shaker. On that note, only one word was written: soon. I was home alone one night back in 2009. My parents were out on their weekly date nights. One of those had one too many at dinner and passed out in the movie theater kind of dates. Anyways, I had just returned from my afternoon jog. Being a hot August day, I had worked up quite a sweat on my run, so I had decided to take a cold shower and clean up a bit. My house doesn't have air conditioning and was quite stuffed up, so I decided to open a few windows to circulate the airflow within the house. I can remember opening a window in the kitchen, 2 windows across from each other in the living room, and 1 window in the basement. I knew I was going to be spending my evening down there watching movies since it was much cooler. I had my shower, got dressed and went downstairs to make myself some dinner. I took my dinner down to the basement and flicked on Netflix to start my binge-filled night of new shows. I do not recall falling asleep, but I must have passed out not long after eating my food and lying down. When I woke up, it was dark outside. The only light being cast into the basement was from the dimly lit TV screen. It was now freezing in the basement. I could feel a cold breeze circulating the room from having the window open for too long. I got up and walked over to the light switch that was located at the bottom of the stairs. I closed the window, then went back to turn off the TV, grab my dishes, and head upstairs. When I got upstairs, all the lights were off, indicating that my parents were still not home from their date. I cleaned the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, and closed the window above the sink. Just before I went to go up to my room for the night, I remembered that the windows in the living room were still open. I walked over to close the one window by the TV, then over to the next, which was located by the front porch. I noticed that my mom's vase with fake flowers, and it was knocked off the table in front of the window, and the flowers were sprawled out across the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe there was a strong breeze and the curtains had tipped it over. I closed the window and started picking up the flowers. As I was cleaning, I heard a faint squeaky sound. What I could only imagine was the door handle being twisted. I listened as hard as possible. Following the creak of the handle was a creak in the hallway floor upstairs. A pain shot from my stomach to my chest and I froze. What seemed like an eternity of being bent over with my one hand holding the vase and the other clutching the flowers, I slowly stood up. I looked out the front window to check the driveway for my parents, hoping it was one of them upstairs. The driveway was empty. My heart sank. I quickly but quietly put the vase and the flowers down on the table and silently began walking over to the bottom of the stairs to look up. As I got closer to the stairs, I heard 2 more creaks on the floor, which caused me to stop dead in my tracks. I waited, listening. Nothing. I was now only a few steps from the stairs. I took those last few steps and put one hand on the railing. I peeked around the corner and only saw darkness. I didn't know what to do. Do I flick on the lights and let the potential intruder in my house know that I'm coming upstairs? Do I leave and go to a friend's house? Do I call my parents? Do I grow a pair and just go upstairs? I decided to turn my phone on silent and go to the kitchen to text my dad, making sure I was close to the back door for an easy getaway. He said, "It's an old house. It's just settling after a really hot day." I told him about the sound of the door handle twisting. He assumed there was an open window upstairs and the wind was knocking a door against the frame. Was it? Was that it? Could it just be a window that was left open? I felt a huge chunk of my anxiety start to fade away after talking with my dad, so I decided to grab a glass of water and head up to bed. I flicked on the lights for the stairs and started making my way up, but slowly, a tiny knot in my stomach from before. I got to the top of the stairs and noticed that all of the doors were wide open, except for mine. My parents' room and the spare bedroom were on the left, and the den in my room were on the right, with the bathroom at the end of the hallway. Though as my dad had predicted, my door was cracked just enough that a breeze could be making it to hit the frame. It being as hot as it was today, it wasn't unusual for my mom to open all the windows and doors upstairs. I exhaled a sigh of relief. Now fully confident that my dad was right, I turned on the lights to my room, did a quick look around and walked over to my nightstand to put my water beside my laptop. Then went off to the bathroom to get ready for bed. As I lay in bed trying to get sleepy, I was watching my favorite reruns of Seinfeld on my laptop. Then out of nowhere, I heard a sound of something slowly scraping my closet door. I quickly flicked on the light beside my bed. My closet door was cracked open ever so slightly. Questions started racing through my head. Was it open the whole time? Was it closed when I came in? I was positive that it was closed when I came in. Before I even had time to rationalize my thoughts, I heard the most disturbing, creepy, quiet, sinister laugh I've ever heard in my life. No horror movie could ever replicate the sound I just heard. As soon as I slid my laptop off my legs, the closet door burst open and someone was standing in the closet. My clothes were partially covering their body and face. I looked closer, and there was the most sickly, palest, dirtiest woman I have ever seen. For the split second that I saw her in horror, the image was burned into my brain forever. She had no shoes on, her disgusting, dirt-stained feet. Her skin was sickening with white cuts, and dried blood from her face down her arms, all the way to her legs. She was wearing what I assumed used to be a white nightgown. It was now a discolored mess of dirt, blood, and who knows what else. Her gray, blue-veined, sunken-in face closely resembled a decaying skeleton. The rest of her face was hidden by my clothes. She asked in a quiet, grumbling, raspy voice, "Have you seen my baby?" That was enough for me to grab my phone and run. As soon as I was halfway out of my bedroom door, I heard the shriek, "Give me back my baby," and clothes hangers thrashing around behind me. I ran as fast as I could to the upstairs bathroom and locked the door. It was only a second later that I heard a huge crash against the door, along with the woman screaming in a devilish tone, demanding I return her baby to her. I called 911 and the operator assured me the police would be there as fast as they could. I jammed my feet against the door and held my back against the sink, trying my hardest to make sure the door stayed closed. The woman would not let up though. Her shrieks turned into low, demonic-like grunts, and her banging on the door turned into heavy bodily blows. With what seemed like an eternity, I heard a heavenly sound. I heard the police call out that they were entering the residence. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I was upstairs. All I could hear next was a mixed commotion of the officers yelling and the woman growling. The officers ended up pepper spraying the woman, and it took 3 of them to be able to force her to the ground. She was yelling in a possessed-like state the entire time. I did not come out of the bathroom until the cops assured me she was out of the house. The cops told me she was likely on drugs or an escaped mental patient from the next county over. I tried telling them that she sounded like she was possessed or something, but they chalked it up to the woman just needing her medication. My parents arrived home shortly after I gave my statements to the police. We moved out of that house a month later. That was one night I was home alone that sadly, I will never forget.
I didn't know much about living in the wilderness when I bought a house with my best friend, but it was a really good deal that we just couldn't pass up. My friend Julie and I were going to school about a half an hour away, and buying a house for the next 4 years actually turned out to be cheaper than the rent would have been at the end of it all. Plus, this meant no landlords and we could do whatever we wanted with the place. The house was technically considered off-grid since it wasn't connected to our city's power grid, which of course helped us with the price. Thankfully, the previous owners agreed to sell us their solar panels as part of the overall price, which was actually super lucky. The house was also on septic, and we had a well, so even though it was off-grid, we still had all the luxuries of living in a house in the city. Julie and I both had pretty well-paying jobs, and I'm not ashamed to say that we both come from families who helped us with the mortgage from time to time. Anyways, the number one rule that I made with Julie when we agreed to buy this house together was that we wouldn't give our address to anyone but family. No friends, no boyfriends, and especially no random guys. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't want to risk the wrong person knowing that we, 2 22-year-old women, were living 30 minutes outside of town, miles from the next house. It just didn't seem smart to me. Julie always said that she was fine with the rule, and for the first year we lived together, and she respected it. At least, I think she did. Then one day, in our second year of being housemates, I came home to her making out with some random guy on the sofa in the living room. I was livid. I screamed at the guy to get out, which of course only made Julie mad, but I really didn't care. I had boundaries, and my reason for not wanting men over to the house seemed pretty fair. After he left, she yelled at me that I was being stupid and having a guy over from time to time wasn't going to do anything bad. I tried telling her that it just wasn't smart letting people we don't even know into our house and letting it be known that we live alone with basically no means to protect ourselves. But she still didn't get it. She just kept saying, "This isn't the movie Taken. A guy isn't going to come back and kidnap and sell us. Calm down. Live a little." Her making fun of the situation made me feel like I had made a huge mistake buying this house with the person I thought I knew so well. She had been my best friend for 4 years, and I never got the impression that she would be so careless. I called my mom that night and told her what happened. She agreed with me that it was dumb of Julie to invite a guy over that she didn't even know. I also told her that it made me uncomfortable staying there, knowing this guy knew where we lived, who we were, and that we lived alone. I mean, it was obvious no guy lived with us. Every picture in the place was just 2 of us, and I'm pretty sure Julie probably told him that she only had 1 roommate. It wouldn't have been a shocker if she did. She brought him back to the house after all, so telling him about her life wouldn't have been a big deal. My mom told me that if I was uncomfortable that I could just stay with her for a few nights, and if I wanted to go back after, then I could, and if not, I could stay however long I needed. I appreciated the offer and decided that I'd go to school the next day, go home, pack some things, and then head off to my mom's for a bit. Julie thought that I was being dramatic, but I didn't care. I went to school the next day as planned and made my way back to the house that afternoon. I decided to wait until Julie got home to let her know how long I'd be gone and just to make sure that she'd locked up. Clearly, she wasn't the most responsible person, so I couldn't rely on her to secure the place after I left. At around 8 p.m., I decided I was done waiting and began making my way to the front door with my bag in hand. When I reached the hall that led into the living room, I stopped in my tracks. Thankfully, the darkness that filled the house hid me as I watched 2 men in black masks standing at the door behind the frosted glass. They were talking to each other when I heard one of them say, I'm telling you, man, the girls who live here, they're all types of fine. Now get the door open before they hear you. My heart sank and I didn't know what to do. I just had to hide. I guess now I realize that I probably should have slipped out the back door, but I really wasn't thinking. Instead, I slowly walked back into my room, shut and locked the door, and started trying to find some places to hide. I watched a movie the previous night that gave me the idea of opening my window to make it look as though I'd gone out that way, so I did that, and climbed into the back of my closet and hid under a couple of thick comforters I'd shoved back there after last winter. I heard the sound of the glass in the front door shattering, and I felt tears beginning to streak down my face. I wasn't going to be one of those girls you see in movies and TV shows who can't keep quiet, though. I was barely breathing so I wouldn't make a sound. I listened as they made their way through the house, loudly arguing with each other that they hadn't found us yet. I silenced my phone so it wouldn't give up my hiding spot if it were to go off, and I texted Julie not to come home, that people had broken into our house and to call 911 immediately. I also texted my mom and told her what was happening and for her to call 911 too. Of course, they both started blowing up my phone, but when I heard the men try the handle to my bedroom door, I couldn't focus on anything but staying hidden and staying quiet. She's gotta be in here. Her car's out front. I'm gonna be so pissed if she's not. You had me break into this house for nothing. They argued back and forth like that for a couple of minutes until one of them must have gotten tired of it and kicked the door in. I was relieved when the window trick seemed to work and they screamed at each other that I'd gotten away. The relief only lasted a minute though, when one of them told the other to look around for anything they could take that might have been worth something. I started praying that they wouldn't look too far into my closet, that they wouldn't pull back the comforters I was under and do what men do to women whose houses they break into. I heard one of the men leave my room, but I could tell one of them stayed. I heard him begin to go through my drawers and throw things across the room. He seemed frustrated, which was probably due to the fact that I don't own super nice things. No expensive jewelry, nothing designer. I could never justify spending that kind of money, and clearly this guy didn't appreciate that. My breath stopped in my throat when I heard his footsteps get closer to the closet doors. I didn't move an inch. There was no way that I was going to give this guy any reason to believe I was in there. It felt like I was going to have a heart attack when he opened the closet doors. I could feel the vibrations of him moving things around off the shelves overhead, and just when I felt him grab hold of the blankets I was under, his friend burst into the room, yelling that they had to go. Apparently they heard sirens down the road and got scared. They ran out of the house and I stayed in my spot. I had every intention of staying there all night. I was terrified of the possibility that they were still there. And that was until I heard my mom's voice, calling for me from inside the house. I tore the comforters off my body, and as quickly as I could, I ran toward my mom's voice. The second I saw her, I burst into tears. All the emotion I'd held in that whole time was being let out, and I couldn't control it. I wish I could tell you that they found the men who broke in, but they didn't. They left behind no evidence, and the police didn't find anyone in the woods surrounding the house. The guy Julie brought over the previous night had a solid alibi too, so they ruled him out. He also denied telling anyone where we lived, but I don't buy it. I moved out the next day. It took a while, but Julie eventually agreed to take my name off the mortgage. One of our other friends moved in with her, and I moved back in with my parents. I feel safer with them. I just wish they'd caught the guys who terrorized me that night.
Our official merch store is finally here. If you want to support more of our channel, check out our merch shop. The link is in the description down below. See you on the next video.